Well, why me is for the same reason everybody else is down here. Who can ever say no to Kevin Cole? For the past 36 years that I have lived in Rexburg, I have been able to hide my vast musical talent from the community. Because of my extremely shy nature and overly reserved personality, I have desired to live under the grid, especially about my musical talent. I have been so successful at this that not once have I ever been asked to sing at a funeral or a wedding. In fact, I only sang in a ward choir one time about 30 years ago. They were begging for male voices, so I did go to one practice. The choir director told me afterwards, my voice was so intimidating to the other singers, would I just bring refreshments next time? My vast library of music, which we keep in the piano bench in our house. Nobody plays the piano, but we dust it. My wife dusts it every week, but we never open up the bench. But I went to the bench and I found two great pieces of music. An LDS hymn book that I'm sure was stolen from the Fourth Ward Chapel. And beginning piano for my one child who took piano lessons for 3 weeks. I also found an old sock. So I would tell you all to go home and open up your piano bench, and you don't know what you might find in it. Maybe even a bow tie. But I do have a rare copy of a lecture by my good friend and leading musical historian, Peter Schickley, and his research on PDQ pop that I would like to share with you this evening. In 1954, Professor Peter Schickley of the University of Southern North Dakota at Humboldt was rummaging around a Bavarian castle in search of rare musical gems. He happened instead upon the original manuscript of one PDQ Bach. After having the work performed, the professor realized, too late, that he had released a monster on the musical world. The conspiracy of silence that surrounded PDQ Bach's very existence for 2 centuries began with his own parents. PDQ was both the last as well as the least of Johann Sebastian Bach's 20-odd children, and he was certainly the oddest. His father ignored him completely, setting an example for the rest of the family, and indeed the rest of the world. PDQ's father, Johann Sebastian, is often simply called J.S. Bach, also known as Papa Bach. He sired lots of very talented children. They too are known by their initials and achieved musical fame and acclaim. PDQ Bach, however, would break that family tradition. Among his more well-known siblings was the youngest of Johann Sebastian's acknowledged children, J.C. Bach. He was a great inspiration from the young Mozart, who, when a teenager, heard Johann Christoph Bach perform the newly invented instrument called the loud soft. This technological wonder and marvel could play both loudly and softly. Today we just call it the soft, or in Italian, a forte piano. Today we just call it the soft of the piano. An older brother, C.P.E. Bach, gained prominence as the chief court composer for the Prussian king Frederick the Great, who, when he was not attacking neighboring countries, went to his gentler and softer side, playing of all instruments the mighty flute. And unfortunately, PDQ's older brother, W.F. Bach, though recognized now as a fine musician, would never find permanent employment and die in poverty, becoming a role model for many starving musicians of today. But let us continue. It is about the time of F.W. Bach's birth in 1710 that the inspiration for P.D.Q. Bach's 1712 overture begins. About the time of W.F.'s birth, his new father, Johann Sebastian Bach, lots of Bachs in this, was gaining fame throughout Germany as an organist, and an organist with a special knack for composing fugues. Now, without being too technical, a fugue is like a round. You hear the same melody repeated over and over and over. But fugues are much more complicated, with the melody sometimes being played upside down or backwards, etc., and etc. And at times they get dreadfully long. So think of a fugue as a round on steroids. Well, anyway, a few years prior to his son's birth, Papa Bach had composed what is now known as his Little G minor fugue. It's only about 3.5 minutes long, so don't worry. Now, this great G minor fugue that he also wrote goes on and on, like he doesn't know how to end the darn thing. But that's another problem that we're going to talk about later tonight. For now, though, I would like the orchestra to play for you the Little Fugue. Count how many times you hear the opening 3-note melody. After hearing the music of his famous father, you will be able to compare it to the music of PDQ, which will follow. You can decide for yourself just how far apart actually fell, how far the apple fell from the tree. Get ready to count. Maestro, if you please. Unlike his father, P.D.Q. Bach was virtually unknown during his lifetime. In fact, the more he wrote, the more unknown he became. He finally attained total obscurity at the time of his death, and his musical output would probably have followed him into oblivion had it not been for the zealous efforts of Professor Schnickerly. In 1712, Overture for a Really Big Orchestra stands out among P.D.Q. Bach's other works for two primary reasons. First, it is the most programmed instrumental piece ever written by P.D.Q. In other words, this kind of programmed music was inspired and will remind a careful listener of an actual event in history. And secondly, the overture's discovery has led to a shocking revelation about the composer's own father, the great Johann Sebastian Bach. This discovery has landed like a bombshell on the usually serene musical landscape. Riot has been reported. The 1712 overture is based on an anecdote told to P.D.Q. Bach by his cousin Peter Ulich Bach, known affectionately as P.U. Bach. P.U. lived in Dusseldorf, not to be confused with the well-known better city Dusseldorf. Dusseldorf was only a few miles down the road from where P.D.Q. lived. As his closest relative, P.U. was one of the few members of the Bach clan who was actually on speaking terms with P.D.Q. The story may be summarized as follows. The town of Dusseldorf was founded early in the 18th century and named for two brothers, Rudy and Dieter Dudel. Rudy remained mayor of the newborn bird for the rest of his life, but Dieter had a dream of starting a musicians' colony, an entire city devoted to music. This dream, he realized, could only be realized in the New World. So in 1712, Dieter and several other bagpipers sailed to Boston, never to return to Germany. Henceforth, Rudy, who stayed in Germany, became his Del Dr. Dudel, while Dieter is known in history even today as Der Yankee Doodle. Unfortunately, the leader of the Boston's Musician Guild was a ruthless man named Weasel. Having heard of Dieter's Doodle's plan, he and his cronies were on hand to meet Doodle's ship when it pulled into the Boston harbor. They intended to prevent the newcomers' debarkation, but Dieter and his companions escaped to the other side of the bay in a dinghy. The Germans headed west, with Weasel and the Bostonians in furious pursuit. Soon the city was left far behind, and by midnight, so did the pursuers. Dieter decided it was now safe for him and his men to stop and sleep until daybreak. When they awoke, they found themselves in a beautiful landscape of low forested mountains and pleasant fields, warmed by brilliant morning sun and serenaded by the songs of an entrancing variety of birds. Here, Doodle thought, is where I will build my colony. The immigrants continued down the road until they came upon a little church from which they suddenly heard the sounds of a mighty pipe organ. I must now quote directly from P.U.'s Bach's letter to P.D.Q. Bach. They went inside and after listening to the glorious music for a while, introduced themselves to the organist. And who do you think it was? Are you ready for this? It was your old man. Hey, I'm not kidding. You know, I'm sure your father was the guy to get in 1712 when it came to testing new organs. And whoever had built this one in Boston must have offered old Sebastian a boatload of money to go over to the New World and check it out. The unexpected meeting with J.S. Bach was suddenly interrupted by the sound of approaching horse hooves as the dreaded weasel and his men came thundering into the scene. However, having ridden all through the night, they reached the church, completely exhausted. Suddenly, they all dropped en masse to the ground. An event later immortalized in the song, "Drop Goes the Weasel." The elated Germans rang the church bell and offered to buy everyone a drink at the nearest tavern. There they were taught and joined in singing what might be called the national anthem of the New World. Dvorak would blatantly plagiarize the same melody 181 years later in his own New World Symphony. The melody of this pre-revolutionary patriotic song is still remembered. P.D.Q. Bach both quotes it in the bass instruments near the end of the overture, but the words are now all but forgotten. Freedom, of thee we sing. Freedom is our goal. We want no English king. The new world will rock and roll. And finally, the striking absence of any biological reference, biographical, not biological, references to Johann Sebastian Bach in the year 1712, plus the pause in the following year of his impressive birth rate he seemed to have going, and his seemingly endless offspring can finally be explained. Bach was simply not at home. He was in the New World testing organs. That this revelation has not been accepted, in fact, by the music establishment is of no surprise, since it would mean a lot of textbooks would have to be rewritten. Additionally, many tenured professors would actually have to change some of their lectures and PowerPoint presentation, and that might mean real work for them. Besides, these members of the music establishment have not yet even accepted the existence of P.D.Q. Bach, one of whose major works is the 1712 Overture. It shows Tchaikovsky to be the shameless plagiarizer some of us have always known him to be. And he and his knockoff copycat of the 1812 Overture. Certainly, a composer of P.D.Q. Bach's would never stoop so low. Now sit back and relive this epic tale as you listen to the Rexburg Tabernacle Orchestra under the direction of Kevin Hall present Rexburg's world premiere of the truly unique, one-of-a-kind 1712 Overture for a really big orchestra by P.D.Q. Bach. Please enjoy. Now that is what I call inspired music. A truly unique masterpiece. Truly our own Rexburg Tabernacle Orchestra has never sounded like that before. And what a glorious, fiery way to end the piece of music with a bang and a flame. Unlike so many lesser but more famous conventional composers who never figured out how to end their music. Here, let me explain it this way. That's the end of a symphony. By Beethoven or Tchaikovsky. No matter which composer or hallowed be his name, they all have good beginnings, but their endings sound the same. With banging on the kettle drums, those copper-colored metal. Between the cymbals crashing, the brasses keep rehashing the same darn note. The clarinets are tweeting and the tubas keep repeating till it gets your goat. Then all of the musicians repeat these repetitions till you're ready for the booby hatch. And then they start again. The classical composer, be it Brahms or be it Bach, when it comes to writing endings, had an awful mental block. And that applies to Haydn, to Handel and to Glinka, to Rimsky-Korsakov, and others I can't think of. The ending of a symphony is what they call a coda, and I collected some of them. You ought to get a load. They're actual and factual. I'll quote you note for note. The ending of some symphonies that great composers wrote. A work of art should have an end that's not too short or long. To give you an example, here's a simple little song. Now let us take our simple song and find out if it blends well with the end of Schubert's Seventh, and I hope all's well that ends well. The end of Schubert's Seventh should be drastically diminished. He spent so long on this one that his eighth one was unfinished. You think the concert's over and you're halfway out the door, and boy, do you feel stupid when they start to play some more. When Schubert wrote the ending, he thought it was really super. Now he's come down through history as Franz, the party pooper. I have an urgent message from the wife of the concertmaster. Before this guy is finished with the trumpets and the horn, within these tabernacle walls, 3 babies will be born. The thing about this ending that makes us even madder, it's the test test of the endurance of a concert lover's bladder. Now let us put the end of Mozart's overture to Figaro on Old MacDonald Had a Farm. It's just like adding Miracle Grow. On this farm he had some goats. Mozart still got lots more notes. On this farm he had a pig. Wolfgang, you wrote this too big. On this farm he had a hen. Uh-oh, here they go again. On this farm he had a horse. It had a better end, of course. One more time, Mozart, baby. Now let us take a simple tune, the well-known Yankee Doodle, and add it to Beethoven's Fifth, which makes symphonic strudel. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure. To be with you tonight. And I do want to thank the Rexburg Tabernacle Orchestra under the direction of Kevin for playing all these magnificent melodies, including those of Ludwig van Beethoven. Come on, let's go. Oh boy. They were all good composers, but what they didn't dig was how to write a great ending like Little Porky Pig.